Welcome to episode 24 of Social Anxiety Solutions, your journey to social confidence. My name is Sebastiaan van Schrier, and I'm an ex-social anxiety disorder sufferer. Thanks to energy psychology and the help of some brilliant therapists, I've been able to become anxiety-free, and I'm comfortable and at ease in social situations. Now, on this show, I interview experts each week to explore different social anxiety solutions from both Western traditional psychology as well as Eastern energy psychology. So each week, we'll put new tools into your toolkit to enhance your social confidence. Today, I'm interviewing Willem Lammers on his wonderful technique, Logosynthesis. Here's a bit about Willem. Willem is a psychologist and a licensed psychotherapist who has been working on the boundaries of body, mind, and spirit since the beginning of his career. He trained in bioenergetics, transactional analysis, hypnotherapy, NLP, and energy psychology, and he's a skillful teacher and trainer. Since 2005, he created Logosynthesis, an amazing new tool for personal development, and this is what he'll be sharing about today. So thank you for being on the show, Willem.
Thank you, Sebastiaan.
Well, we want to hear all about this, but we first want to get to know you a little bit and hear some words of encouragement. So let's start out with the inspiration round.
Okay.
So, Willem, for some people, overcoming their social anxiety can happen pretty quickly. Other people, it takes a bit longer, and that's why we do the inspiration round each week. We also like to get to know you a bit, and most of the people that come on the show, I ask them the question, have you suffered from social anxiety? And so if that's the case for you, can you share an experience of that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is very familiar for me because I've been, let's say, one of the more quiet people in life. I'm not the one who's up front immediately. And I think one of my most spectacular experiences with social anxiety was when I was working at the university as a young psychologist. I was working in the training of medical students, and I had my first presentation at university for 240 medical students.
Oh, wow.
So that was not the worst, but since I have a little bit of social anxiety, I decided, okay, the lecture is going to take 45 minutes. I'll order a movie, and then I'll talk for 10 minutes. And in those 35 minutes of the movie, I can look at the audience and look how they react and prepare myself. So this was going to happen at 11:15 in the morning. And at 11, it turned out that the movie was not there, but those 240 people were there.
Great.
Yeah. So I was standing there with across a wall of students who wanted to hear from me. And I really felt myself freezing. And I've been talking in that microphone in a kind of frozen state for about half an hour. And I don't know what I've said. I made the mistake every new presenter makes, preparing far too much material. So I didn't have the problem to fill the half the hour, but there was this feeling of total non-communication. So one person was writing something, the other was reading newspaper, the third was eating his lunch, and I was standing there and talking. And after half an hour, a guy upright asked a question, and from that question it became clear that he had understood what I had said, which was totally surprising for me. So from that moment, the ice was broken, and I could start to communicate with that audience. But if you ask me for an experience of social anxiety, that was it.
It sounds like it.
and since then, yeah, I always have it when I'm in front of a new audience, and then I do of course, my logosynthesis exercises. So I just got a request from the Swiss government to offer a lecture for 45 top aides of the minister of X, and then I've got some social anxiety. So especially if I'm the one who is going to open that meeting. So okay, it's still there, but it's there at, let's say, at a much higher level than when I was 30 years old. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And nowadays
And
I know what to do with it. So that's a difference. So if I feel reluctant or shy or whatever, then I have my logosynthesis exercises, and that works usually. Yeah,
you got a strategy to deal with it when it
yeah,
comes up
yeah,
versus
yeah, yeah,
what you had back then,
yeah.
which was just
Uh,
rattle it all out.
and of course, I have to prepare the meeting, so there's no way around that.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Um, did you work with people with social anxiety, perhaps?
all the time. It's
Hmm.
it's. I've been a psychotherapist for more than 30 years, and if you have a psychotherapy practice, you have people with social anxiety,
Yeah.
and that's also the reasons why I'm doing this work and why I discovered this method is because I've been looking for ways to improve my work for 30 years. So,
Mm.
and if someone um, is shy or reluctant or withdrawn, they need a strategy to come out of it. And often this strategy is based on removing early trauma. And I've been a trauma specialist for 20, 30 years now, and I learned a lot in that time. And in fact, everybody who goes into the world needs a support in finding a strategy to show themselves. And if this strategy hasn't been learned in childhood, you have to learn it later. And sometimes people are restricted or limited by what their parents told them about the world, and they don't trust themselves to show what they are here for in the world.
Can you give an example of something that that might have been lacking in their upbringing, which now causes them to
Yeah,
not have a strategy?
what what we often see is that people, let's say children are very easy. They're spontaneous. They like to show what they can. And if there is a parent who says, "Oh, keep your mouth shut, don't be stupid, or you stupid, um, don't show yourself, um, you're not so important." These are all messages which are limiting and which you take into to the world. So the patterns you learn in the family, how you are allowed to speak or not allowed to speak, those are the patterns you will take into society. So if there has been, let's say, a little theater play in the family at Christmas, and uh, aunts and uncles are applauding when the child shows playing Mother Mary or whatever, then it's quite different uh, compared to where they say, "Oh, you look very stupid when you were playing Mother Mary."
Hmm.
So those patterns, those templates you learn about showing yourself in the family are the templates you will show in society when you are expected to say something.
Mm.
So if your parents think you have to be perfect, then you will think that people think that you have to be perfect. If your parents have taught you that you're too loud, you will have difficulty to speak up.
Right.
So that's what you learn in the family, you learn it in school, and you take those patterns into society. Yeah,
Well, my mom used to say "slow finiso audio,"
yeah,
which translates to, uh, um, don't be such a spectator, don't make such a show. So
Yeah,
that was one of the messages I got when I was young. So now when I would be out and about and I'd be making a show, now I would feel shame coming up. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I'm pushing this too far. I better tone it down. I need to fit in here. I need to do things right. And
yeah.
yeah.
And then you have these messages, and as soon as you talk to an audience, those messages of your mother will be active, and then
Mm.
the shame will be active, and at the same time you're expected to say something useful. So you get into this what I call a frozen world. So as soon as you see an audience, then this voice of your mother becomes active, and you react to the audience in the way you reacted to your mother until you neutralize these messages.
Excellent. I think that sets the stage very well for the topic of the day. So let's move there
Yeah.
now. Let's move to the topic of the day, logosynthesis. Here we go.
Okay.
So Willem, can you share what logosynthesis is and also maybe share how it was developed?
Yeah. What is logosynthesis? It's a system. It's not only a technique. It's a system for self-coaching and for what I call guided change. So psychotherapy, coaching, counseling, where professionals work with people to get them uh, ahead in their development. So it's a combination of a philosophy, a method, a set of techniques, an attitude, and it's something that people can learn to do to apply for themselves. I wrote a book about that, and it's something professionals can offer to their clients, and I wrote another book about that. So at the moment, my main activity is to teach logosynthesis to professionals, and those professionals offer it to their clients or to groups to teach them the self-coaching. How did I discover this? Let's say I've been on a path of 30, 40 years trying to find out how to improve the quality and the efficacy of my work. So I learned transaction analysis, I learned Gestalt, bioenergetics, NLP, energy psychology, and I wasn't satisfied. And so I learned a lot. So especially energy psychology made a very important um, yeah, contribution to my skills and my professionality. And yeah, I didn't like the tapping. I didn't. I also studied EMDR. I didn't like this. And at a certain moment, there was an important stage in my life in which I discovered. I think the example is good to tell. So there was a client who had an accident 6 years ago, and she fell down the stairs on the railway station early in the morning. She had an amnesia for the event. Uh, she was yeah, verwond. Um,
Injured?
she was injured. She was injured, and something had happened, and she didn't know it. And she said this very interesting expression. She said, "I'm beside my shoes." And at that moment, I realized I saw a kind of shade next to her, and she used this Swiss expression, "and beside my shoes" means I'm crazy.
Mm.
And then I said, "Oh yeah, if you're beside your shoes, maybe you can try to move into your shoes again." And she visualized moving into her shoes again, and then suddenly she had a kind of flash in which she completely got access to the memory of that accident. So she was split in one part of her physical body, and another part was beside her shoes, and these two were separate. And even
Mm.
to the point that when she grabbed for the door of the shower in the morning, she grabbed next to this doorknob. So one part was steering her body, but the body was not there where the steering went to.
Wow.
So, and I said, oh, I'm into something very interesting here. So I started to explore, does it happen more times? And then at a certain time, I was working in Moscow for a workshop, and was this guy, his name was Alexei, I think, and he had his body in a very strange angle. It was like this, and he said, yeah,
Crooked.
yeah. So there was a kind of, he said, why are you sitting like that? He said that there's a kind of wedge there, which pushes me there. So I asked him to, yeah, visualize and to remove that wedge, and suddenly he had a very different presentation. So there was an object in his personal space, as I call it, which pushed him there. So there was this very interesting experience that there are people have a body and there's something else around that body which influences them, and that something is in space. And so I continue to explore that, and uh, then I discovered a website called immunix.org, and they used words and sentences to influence the energy field of people. And since I came from an EFT, TFT, TAT tradition, and the energy was really very normal to me to work with, so I designed a number of sentences which people can say to remove energy or to retrieve their own energy. So from that point on, in fact, there are three principles. Energy is in flow or it's frozen. Energy is in the right place or in the wrong place. And words can move energy. So that means if I'm talking to people, we have this example of your mother. Your mother gives you a message, don't make a show. That means that in your personal space, there is an energetic representation of your mother. And I can ask you, if you think about your mother, where do you perceive her in space? That will be my question. Would be my question if I would work with you now. So, and then you would say, okay, she is up left somewhere or up right. And then I can ask you, how do you know she's there? And then you will say, I hear her. She says this sentence, don't make a show. Or you have an image, or you have a sense of her energy. And once you have identified that representation, you notice, oh, if I perceive that representation, I react to it. I react with an emotion, with shame. I react with guilt, I should have done better. I react with sadness that my mother is not ideal. And I have also a reaction in my body. And that means as soon as this representation of your mother becomes active, it's going to change your emotions. It's going to change your physical state, and it's going to change your actions. So what I'm doing, Logosynthesis, is relatively simple. I have three sentences, and the first sentence is, I retrieve all my energy bound up in this voice of my mother and take it back to the right place in myself. So the principle is energy can be in the wrong place, I take it to the right place. The energy of your mother is also in your personal space, in your field. Your mother did her best to educate you or to raise you to a nice citizen of this world, so she left some of her energy in that field of yours. And so your mother, a part of the energy of your mother is in that space. Then the second sentence is, I remove all non-me energy, or energy that doesn't belong to me, from related to this message, don't show off, from all of my cells, all of my body and my personal space, and send this energy to where it truly belongs. And then the energy of your mother disappears from your system. And you feel a change. And you have been doing this for many years, so you have energy bound up in the representation of your mother, the voice and the image. Your mother has bound her energy in your personal space, and you bind energy in reactions patterns to this image. So the third sentence is, I retrieve all my energy bound up in all my reactions to this representation of my mother. And then if you say these 3 sentences, then there is a change, and your mother will disappear from your field, and the energy you put in this representation of your mother will disappear from your field, and then you're able to make a connection to the people who are really there, instead of reacting to a statue of your mother in your personal space. And that's the work. So we have these 3 principles: energy is in flow or it's frozen, energy is in the wrong place or in the right place, and words move energy, or words get energy flowing. And you can do this for yourself. It might take some time to learn to identify the different triggers for social anxiety in this case. But you can practice and practice and practice. And I see, I regularly get feedback from people I don't know at all. They send me a mail and say, oh, your method, I read your book and I know how to do it, and it's amazing. And I see the same happening with my clients, but my clients usually have a history of trauma, of pain, of long-standing difficulties in love and work, let's say that. And then we need to slice the experiences and do this again and again for different aspects, as I call it. It's the same as in energy psychology. We have a lot of different aspects. And I can say, yeah, applying logosynthesis is like eating an artichoke. You can start everywhere on the artichoke, and you take leaf after leaf, and in the end, it's gone.
Yeah, I can certainly vouch for it being a very powerful release technique and an experience, both personally and with my clients. It's quite amazing and very effective. What Willem just shared, his books and all the websites and everything he just mentioned, you can find that at the show notes page, which will be socialanxietysolutions.com/Willem. So Willem, we're talking about logosynthesis today, and before you explain what that is, can you share what? Well, actually, let me just share what I have experienced from using it. So it was taught to me initially by Steve Well, someone who we've had on the show earlier, and he said that it was really, really amazing and that I should check it out. And since have, and I used it on myself, used it with my client, and what my personal experience of it is I tune into for example, a memory. And the memory is, when I think about the memory, it's upsetting me. And, I get a feeling or a sensation somewhere in my body. I might think of, I'll take a random example. When my teacher rejected me in front of the class and I became red. And, when I would think about that, I would then do this technique or say these phrases, and Willem will explain in a bit exactly what that is. And within just a couple of minutes, 5 minutes, all of the charge is off of it, and each sentence kind of releases it's a very subtle yet profound release that you experience, and you know, I feel more peaceful, I feel more relaxed, I feel more at ease. It doesn't bother me anymore, and I've experienced this as quite a profound shift, both in myself
Mhm.
and my clients. What do you find that people experience when they use these, logosynthesis?
I only work with logosynthesis. I don't use tapping. I don't use poses. I don't need anything but a good working alliance. So it's very important that the client trusts me. It's very important to do a good interview before and after, and then the change in the process go through the logosynthesis sentences.
Hmm.
Uh, I think I cannot say how important it is to have this working alliance, because the more traumatic the history of the client is, the more solid the trust needs to be. So, for instance, I have very important experiences with the trauma after sexual abuse. I have important, let's say, psychological abuse. Trauma in many different forms can be resolved with logosynthesis if the client trusts me and if the client is safe and if the client knows I can go through this. What they experience usually, let's say in the moment, they feel a deep relaxation.
Hmm.
Um, let's say after every sentence and during the saying of a sentence, anything can happen. People have these rapid eye movements, from hypnotherapy. People can start shaking or vibrating. People can get a headache. They can get dizzy. Every, let's say, reaction of the body I've seen already.
Hmm.
Some people feel like vomiting. They didn't yet, I'm glad. Um,
Hmm.
that's the process itself. It's a very deep processing of something. So if there is a relaxation, uh, that's one thing. If you have to have the vibrations, the shaking, that's all possible. And then there is a very important difference before and after. So it's for me very important to really assess how do you feel in the beginning on a scale from 0 to 10. How distressful is this experience if you think about it now? And then I ask the same question afterwards, and the client said, like, I gave a course this weekend, and there was a very intensive image, and it went from an 8 to a 2. I worked with the trauma in the as a result of an accident. A woman who had had a serious car accident had um, a pain with an intensity of 8, and it went to a 2 after one round of logosynthesis.
Well,
So we have, yeah, I wrote on it on the Facebook page. So what people notice is a difference. So let's say the processing is one part, but the most important is a relaxation. Let's say switching to an adult attitude instead of a child attitude. So if
hmm.
I have a social anxiety because I'm still reacting to this teacher, and if I neutralize the image of the teacher, then I will say, oh yeah, oh, this teacher had a busy time and he was very young and he was very insecure himself.
Hmm.
You can't see that if you're in this child position, but you can see that as an adult.
Right.
Because if you were 40 and the teacher was 25 when he taught you, you suddenly see, oh, this teacher was only 25.
Hmm.
Okay, if I had a class at 25 without much of experience, I would be maybe irritated too when a child is rebellious.
Hmm.
And that's so I see that happening. So there's a shift towards becoming an adult.
A more realistic viewpoint, right? So when there might be that insecurity from what the teacher said to me, I'm in a certain situation, and normally I meet someone new and I feel that insecurity coming up, the same insecurity that I felt when I was 12 and my teacher made fun of me.
Yeah.
When I use the sentences, when I use logosynthesis on that memory, and I clear that, I resolve that. Now I no longer experience that insecurity when I meet new people, and instead I just feel calm and relaxed, and I'm just like, hey, nice to meet you. And I am more of an adult about it than a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I noticed this. I'm teaching a lot in Brussels, and my French used to be a school French. So so I was very, yeah, let's say a little bit inhibited in speaking French, even though I understand quite a lot. So I got a training in high school in understanding a lot, but not speaking much. And if I said something, there was a teacher who said, "Oh, this is not right." So when I started speaking French in those trainings, I always had this basic attitude that my partner in the conversation was going to correct me. That's not true. That's true when you're in high school. Then there is a relationship in which you don't speak the language, the other person speaks the language, and the other person corrects you. In this case, the people were interested in what I had to say and not in how I said it. So after I neutralized my French teachers, I noticed that my French really made an enormous increase because, yeah, there was these teachers were gone who were nagging at me all the time because I said something wrong. And I think that maybe those people will laugh about my French, but they don't care and I don't care. And
You're more free.
I'm much more free. And I have I I, I noticed last year that I'm giving these seminars in English and they're translated, and I suddenly noticed that I was talking French at the lunch table with someone else about logosynthesis. And of course, the language was familiar because I heard it all the time in French, what I said in English. But I started to use what I heard to make a conversation in French. So one of the things it's really amazing is in learning languages. And we have an international summer academy each year where people come from many countries, and most of them are not native speakers. And after a week, they speak English. They just do it, and they don't think about it too much.
What are other benefits that kind of let you know that, hey, this has worked for me? Logosynthesis has improved my life. What are benefits that you could?
Yeah, what I think is very important. um, it works with limiting memories or traumatic memories. It works with fantasies about how people will react, or it works with fantasies how things should be. So if, for instance, if I'm angry, it means literally that I have a perception of the real world and I have a fantasy about how you should be. And I can do logosynthesis on my fantasies how the world should be, and that means that I arrive into reality. So it works with memories, fantasies, beliefs. If I have a limiting belief and I neutralize the belief in logosynthesis, I've got more freedom. I have more contact with my adult competence. So, in fact, I always say that there are two important questions people have to answer in life. And one question is, what are you here for in your life? and second is what keeps you from living that.
Mm.
And what I notice is that people become more aware of their purpose in life. So let's say also the spiritual dimension, what I'm here for, and that there are less limits in living that. So let's say on an existential level, there's more freedom, there's more contact. In love and work, you're more effective. As a psychotherapist, I'm much more fit and less tired than I used to be after I see clients because I'm able to stay in contact without activating old stuff all the time because the stuff is neutral.
Mm.
And it doesn't change your life. Let's say it doesn't change what happened to you, but it can change what will happen to you because you're more in contact with your potential and you're more in contact with the people around you.
I've noticed in myself. I said it earlier. Like for me, it's been subtle but profound.
Yeah.
Like it works on a deep level. It's kind of uh, like things are integrating on a deep level and just feel more solid and more grounded and more connected with myself. And from that place, I find it easier to connect with other people.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah,
I agree
more
with that.
peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. For people suffering from social anxiety, what would your advice be, logosynthesis wise?
I would say, I would say you can read my self-coaching book. So the self-coaching with Logosynthesis, you find it on Amazon or you find it in the iBook store for your iPad. And in that book, there are a number of exercises, and you learn in that from that book to identify the issues. So if people have social anxiety, there is a kind of being flooded by an experience, and you don't know what happens to you, and you learn to determine what are the triggers. So what is it? So, for instance, I've got a wedding next week, and weddings used to be a horror for me because you know a few people, and the rest you don't know, and you come, and everybody asks, "Oh, who are you?" And what I noticed that's much easier for me now, but if you identify a situation, you can say, okay, this person seems to remember me of someone. And now, is it the teacher? Is it the, your mother, your father, uh, older brothers and sisters? And they will activate memories. And in these memories, you will find someone who's limiting you. Don't show off, your own example.
Mm.
And you start to neutralize all those memories. So it's identify what's the memory, localize where do you perceive this person in space, do you see her, hear or sense her or him, and then you say the sentences for this representation for of this person. You will notice that that person is not between you and the other anymore when you have done the logosynthesis sentences. And so my advice would be just learn the procedure, practice, practice, practice. And
Mm.
every single scene you have neutralized will not be in the way anymore. There will be another scene that comes up because these are like the layers of an onion. But every single layer, every layer you peeled off is not there anymore. For some people, it can be confronting because they discover that there is much more than they thought there was. And in that case, I would say find someone who can support you in that process. You don't have to do it on your own. And we have very good experience with Skype conversations like this. It I do a lot of work on Skype, and my colleagues also. So on the website logosynthesis.net, you find a number of people who are trained in this, and you can contact. But you don't have to do it alone. I think, yeah, of course, social anxiety means that you're scared to meet people, and it can be in the way of contacting a therapist. But it might help to work directly from the book step by step and neutralize those emotions that are in the way of you connecting to people.
Great. And each step gets you closer to freedom. Each step connects you more
So
yourself. And,
I call it the stairway to heaven. And you have a step, and then you have a new step. That stairway doesn't end, but that's at the end there's heaven, and that's not on earth. Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. Willem, if there was something that I could have asked you that would have allowed you to share something important, what would that question have been, and how would you answered it?
I feel okay. I think I've covered the most important aspects of logosynthesis just to begin with. And
okay.
You find so professionals find the rest in the logosynthesis handbook.
Okay, excellent.
I can show it for those who see it.
Well, we're on audio only, so nobody sees it. But
okay. Yeah.
I'll cut that out anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. All right, thank you. All the references that Willem just made will be found on the show notes page, which again is socialanxietysolutions.com/Willem. Let's move on to the final empowerment round.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Willem, to empower people on their journey, two quick questions for resources before we say goodbye. One, do you have a movie or biography, YouTube video, or any kind of resource that you recommend that is empowering, and then share why you chose it?
Yeah, I like that question, and I have two videos. One video is a TED video on introverts by Susan Cain.
Power of Introverts.
Yeah, and it's amazing because I felt so much from my own experience and from the experience of my clients that those people who are really focused on something in themselves, that they don't exactly know how to cope with the outside world. And this woman described this process in a very beautiful way. And I think social anxiety is making the transition from your own inner world to other people, and it might help to understand who you are if you're more an introvert. It's not a matter of fact that you connect to people, because there's always a kind of threshold in it. The other video I really like is Steve Jobs' presentation in Stanford to new students. He makes a connection. So those people who have social anxiety may be different. The round pegs in a square hole, as he calls it. And he makes he supports you in allowing yourself to be different and do what your thing is. And you might not fit in society one-to-one, but you may develop what you're here for in this world. And that's what I like very much.
I've seen both. I really like those recommendations. I think people should really go and check that out, which they can find on the show notes page. So my final question, can you leave us with where we can find out more about you and about logosynthesis, and then share your favorite quote?
Okay, you find more about logosynthesis in the book Self-Coaching with Logosynthesis, if you want to apply it for yourself and for social anxiety. And if you're a professional in this field, I've written a book this year, it's just published, Logosynthesis, Healing with Words. And it's a handbook for the helping professionals with a preface by Dr. Fred Gallo, who might be known to you. And the website is logosynthesis.net. And we have a Facebook group which is called Logosynthesis, and there are groups in many languages. So we have French, German, Italian, Dutch, and even Slovenian. So there are different discussion groups where I publish on the Facebook group. I publish regularly some essays about different aspects of life. And for the professionals, I would recommend training.
Awesome. And your quote to end this?
My quote. Where's my quote? Go to Evernote. Yes. The quote is from Anais Nin, and the day came when the risk to remain tied in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Willem.
Okay. You're welcome, Sebastiaan. Thank you for
Would you like to explain it?
The quote.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people with social anxiety are tied in a bud. They are not yet blossoming. That's a very painful state because you're growing and growing and growing, and staying tight doesn't stop the pain. And then there is a moment that you come out of that bud and you start to blossom. And that transition is also painful, but it's less painful to make the transition than to stay tight in the bud.
That's beautiful. I'm happy I asked
Okay.
to explain it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic. Willem, I thank you very much for this interview. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me.
People listening to this, I want to urge you to really check out both his self-coaching book and the other resources he mentioned. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Logosynthesis. It's really something amazing. It's something special, and I highly suggest you go check it out. So if you want to find out more about me, my coaching, and my social confidence system, you can go to my website, socialanxietysolutions.com. And I look forward to connecting with you next week again. Bye for now.